And there's nothing more sad than a man who feels useless. When a man feels useless, all hope is gone because every man needs some purpose. Every man needs to feel useful somewhere, somehow. We got enough stuff out there to go out and deal with every day to make yourself a formidable man, a successful man. And this is going to happen just because it's the laws of nature and it's just human nature. But to avoid it as much as possible is to put yourself around other men who are constantly trying to beat you down along with it. Look, as a business owner, I got to go out there and fight competition. I got to go out there and make a name for myself. I got to go out there and battle with clients and, contest other people's interests in my clients and my work. Constantly got to go. I have to go prove myself day in and day out. That'll never end. That'll never stop. Here on YouTube, I'm not a big established channel. I mean, they got people out there who are way ahead of me. And part of the reason I did this is because I can't imagine, because I see some of the people out there and the advice they give about breakups and dating and self-improvement and traditional masculine values and character. I'm like, what? And these guys have hundreds of thousands of followers and have these programs and these courses and all, and I don't have something like this. My stuff comes from years of living. This isn't just some books I've read or some courses I've taken. What I convey here comes from a lifetime of experience. Things I've done the wrong way, things I've done the right way. And I've put together, I've gotten a formula of how to, because I've taken myself from nothing, broken down to something. And I don't ever want to see another man have to struggle alone like that. And there's so many important things and important life skills that come with being a fully integrated man that are untaught and unsaid, especially in society today. You see this epidemic of single moms, boys being raised by women, and boys who are raised by women act like the guys who come in chats and start poking at everybody. It's ridiculous. And they have no guidance. They're lost. The lost boys, like on Peter Pan. A strong masculine figure is almost obsolete in society today. And when I was growing up, I was surrounded with a great deal of dysfunction, and I didn't have anywhere to turn. I didn't have these strong masculine figures to turn to. And what happens is you get a generation of men who are raised by women. And when you see what a single mom would do that got screwed over by Chad Thundercock and got left with a kid. Yes, tough times do build strong men, Doug. But at tough times, knowing that there's other men who've made it through the tough times and how they did it. Thank you. That was so simple and so well put. Like I could have said that in the beginning of the fucking stream and said enough and been off the air already. But it's through the tough times that you make it through that you learn systems. That's when you learn more about yourself. That's when you harden the fuck up. That's when you build that callous, that mental, that emotional, that willpower, that drive, that ambition to keep moving through because you know it's been tough and I've made it through before. I can do it again. Not everybody's cut out for tough times. And that's because there's that word useless and hopeless comes in. And that's what I don't want to happen. I don't want men to think there's nowhere they can go, that there's nobody out there who gives enough of a shit to hear what they got to say and give them at least a pep talk, or at least hey, I understand, I've been there. Here's how I got out of it. Here's what I did. Just like you, Doug. And I'm not even surprised anymore by how, with God running my life, the people that come in and that the intersections that we meet, that a guy like you, Doug, would come in here after having what happened to him, to you, to coming into my channel and lean in for support. Oh, I fucking love that. Well, weak men also can just have the wrong idea. Weak men usually, self-delete. I don't want to see that because a guy thinks he's alone, thinks he doesn't see any way out. Let me tell y'all something. Part of this whole journey that started for me started a long time ago. And this is at the infancy of this whole revelation and this whole journey that I started toward truth and finding ultimately what I call the best version of myself. I don't know what else to say. I think it sounds a little fucked up, but the best version of myself, like, what does that even mean? Finding my potential. And the catalyst, one of the catalysts to that was I had a 21-year-old nephew who, back when I was 18, I lived with my sister and at the time her husband, my brother-in-law. And this baby was just born, and I used to take care of this boy. Like, they'd go out, they were a young couple, and I lived with them. So there'd be nights on the weekends where I was designated to stay home, watch the baby. We'd play with his stuff. I'd feed him, I'd change him, I'd bathe him, I'd put him to bed, I'd wake him up in the morning. Like, I spent years with this little boy. He was like I wouldn't say like a son to me, but I love this kid with all my heart. When my son was born, he was so happy and he used to come around. And I got to see this boy grow up from diapers to, an adolescent and through the awkward phase with the buck teeth and glasses and the crazy hair and awkwardness. And I got to see him turn into a teenager and then a young man. And he was just a stand-up dude. Like, I loved him to death. And he always had a great sense of humor. We had a nickname for each other. I used to call him Snapperhead, and he'd call me Uncle Snapper. And there was a lot of good times we shared. Years ago, I had people over for my son played on a baseball team, and we used to boil crawfish at my place because I boil the best crawfish. We had some big, nice house, big swimming pool and all that. So during these tournament games, there would be breaks in between. All the parents would chip in. We'd get a couple sacks of crawfish, go back to my place, jam it up. Kids would swim, cool off. Parents would relax, catch up. It was a real cool experience. I remember it was Good Friday, and I invited the team over for Good Friday because the little team had bonded. The kids became friends. The parents got close, and it seemed like my place was the place to be. So I called everybody up on the team in a group chat, boiling crawfish in my house, 12 o'clock. Get here. People showed up. I get a phone call. I'm in the middle of boiling crawfish. I got a pot of crawfish on the boiler, and I see my mom's number. And I'm thinking she's telling me she's coming in town for Easter. She used to pop in and out of town. I want to see you before I leave. Or invited me to come there for Easter. At the time, she lived like 3 hours away up in central Louisiana. And it wasn't. She was fucking hysterical. And she said, Joe killed himself. Joe killed himself. I'm like, what? Like, I'm trying to think. Who? Joe. And she met my nephew. He took his own life. And I was supposed to talk to him that week about possibly getting him a job at the refinery I worked at. I talked to somebody who worked as a contractor on our unit. I ain't going to get into all that, but he was at that age where he qualified to hire on. He had the credentials. He made good money. He would have worked on my unit. And I didn't call him. I didn't know he was going through some trouble with a girl through a breakup. I didn't find this out till after. I just remember like, what? What happened? I'm like, you need to calm down and talk to me. And she said, my grandson, Joseph, he killed himself. And she's screaming to the top of her lungs. I started spinning. Like, wait a minute. I didn't get to talk to him yet. I have something to tell him that it can't be true. I walked inside and I sat on my stairs. I hung up the phone because I couldn't hear another word. I didn't know what to say. I just lost the ability to speak. Like, fuck. So I run to the back door. Like, I had this urgent sense of urgency to check on my son. I look out the back door and he is acting an ass in the pool with the best of the team. I'm like, phew. Like, no way. And then I think, what about my sister? What is she going through right now? So I call her. She can't even speak. What do you do for somebody at that point? And then I was like, why are you broken up? Your sister just lost her son. Get your shit together. So I had people over and I came walking out and the guy he's like, when are those crawfish coming out? And I'm like, what? Come on, we're hungry. And I'm like, give me a second. And one guy saw me. You could see, my eyes were a little red. I was crying, of course. It still chokes me up. It's hard to talk about. I think about this every day. And he's like, man, you all right? I said, look, I just got some bad news, man. Bad news. And he goes, what happened? What happened? And I told him, he's like, dude, go. He said, I'll take this over. You don't have to tell anybody. I'm like, no, I got a house full of people here. Like, I can't leave. I can't just tell everybody, go home. Like, that's just how distorted I was at the moment. Who cares if I would have had to have sent everybody home? I just didn't even know what to do at that moment, right then and there. I'd never been confronted with anything like this. So we stayed, we fed, and I was just checked out from that point on. Everybody kind of heard what happened through the guy who came and asked me. Well, of course, I told my wife, and she's like, "Do you want me to just tell everybody to go home?" I'm like, no, let's just be cool. I said, "Look, my mom said she's on the way to my sister's. She's driving in. So let's just get the crawfish bowl done. I'll pick up and I'll go over there later." And that's what I did. So, yeah. And it was because he found out that the girl who broke up with him, it was his high school sweetheart. I remember when he met her, he'd had a hard upbringing in certain dysfunctional areas. She had a family, a nice family who loved him. And she was just, and this is why I tell men, this is what started me on changing my whole perception, because I can't fathom another man wanting to take his own life. Then I started coming across statistics and studies that how common this is. Men who will delete over women because that's how much they had invested. And they don't care. The little girl came to his funeral. She was a little broken up, but she was just dating another guy already. And that's what caused my nephew. Turns out, in retrospect, my sister was telling me what happened weeks later, and she said that they'd broken up. He'd thrown himself into, bettering himself and enrolled back in school. He'd had an accident when he was a kid. He got bit by a dog on the face and got some money from that. And he bought himself a piece of land in a temporary house trailer to build a house. He started building a house on this land, went into overdrive, proving that he's a worthy person, and he didn't have to do that. Every fucking day, this is no exaggeration, I think about the conversation we could have had. Maybe I could have talked him out of it. I'll never know because I didn't call, and I wasn't there for him in his time of need. And I can't imagine a man not feeling like he has a place to go or somebody to tell that this hurt. I'm out of options. The only thing I see left to do is take my own life over a woman, over anybody. And that's not even the end of the story. A couple years later, her other son, who was grieving his brother and got thrown in the middle of this chaos and confusion, like this changed the scope, landscape of my family forever. It'll never be the same. A couple years later, her other son did the same thing. Just confused kid, didn't know which way was up or down, and thought he was just going to follow his brother. Both her sons, me and my sister barely speak anymore. She's not the same person I knew years ago. It's not my sister anymore. It's a shell of a person. And I can't imagine. I cannot imagine, nor do I want to imagine. God, I'm telling you now, I do not want to know. And I mean that sincerely. Knock on wood. I just wanted to convey that to y'all, for y'all to know where the sense of purpose and meaning comes from for me.